The air was thick with the pulse of the music, the clamor of drunken laughter. Before my drink could even touch my lips, his hand clamped onto my collar, a rough, jarring intimacy. I held my breath, letting the charade play out, the innocent bystander. He leaned in, the stench of stale beer and raw arrogance wafting from his crooked smile, and then the words. "She deserves someone who can actually protect her," he sneered, the words a blunt weapon. Then came the shove. The room's boisterous energy instantly froze, laughter dying, the sharp shatter of glass echoing the sudden silence. His chest puffed, a bowl ready to charge, and for a flicker, a subtle, cold smile touched my lips. He saw me as weak. He had no clue I had been her shield against him, against everything he represented, long before this moment. Lena, my wife, had always dismissed him as just a friend from work. Just a friend, a phrase that should be etched, a stark warning, into the very fabric of every marriage. The clandestine messages arriving in the quiet hours, her laughter, a resonance I once cherished, now sharper, more genuine for his jokes than for mine. The phantom scent of an unfamiliar cologne clinging to her skin after those teen dinners, a scent that wasn't mine, a silent declaration. I never confronted her directly. Instead, I retreated into observation. I waited. I listened. I learned. My path began subtly. I seamlessly integrated our smart home cameras with my personal device. Her professional calendar, ostensibly shared for family coordination, became a mirrored projection in my digital world. She saw trust. I was a quiet, relentless algorithm. It didn't take long for what my gut already knew to harden into undeniable fact. He was not merely a colleague. He was the archetype of a man who confused bluster for power and saw manipulation as a pathway to genuine connection. Physical intimacy hadn't yet defined their transgression, but betrayal rarely requires a bed. It needs only a willing heart, a restless conscience, and a whispered promise. The stark memory of his message, its cold, precise words, still resonates. "I can't stop thinking about you. You deserve someone stronger." Her reply was a single, fragile word. "Don't." Was not a firm rejection, but a perilous hesitation. And hesitation, to a man like him, meant an open door, a sliver of hope. His interpretation of that hesitation fueled my resolve. My plan coalesced, not born of blind rage, but of surgical precision, a slow-burning retribution designed to unravel him, to expose her, not through crude fists, but through inescapable consequences. Yet fate, in its dark, ironic humor, had other designs. Violence, in its own unexpected way, found me anyway. The annual office Christmas party, a festive facade, became the perfect, glittering stage. Lena, oblivious, had pressed me to attend. "It'll be fun," she'd chirped. She couldn't know I had already dispatched a meticulously compiled dossier to his manager, his deceptively innocent messages to a married colleague, expense reports for client dinners that stretched long past business hours, meticulously exposing their true nature. But the final, devastating blow I reserved for the party itself. A recording, his voice, laced with a smug, predatory pride that curdled my blood, bragging to a friend about systematically seducing her, making her fall for him. I hadn't released it yet. Timing, I knew, was everything. As I entered the cacophony of the party, the scene was already set. He was predictably drunk, his voice a boisterous bellow that drowned out the DJ, an arm draped around Lena with an intimacy that was far too casual, far too familiar. I moved through the room, extending polite handshakes, offering small, unassuming smiles. Bullies, I've observed, relish such displays of apparent meekness. Then the inevitable aggression, the shove. He craved a spectacle, a public humiliation, and oh, he received one. His open palm slammed against my chest, a dull thud that resonated through the sudden hush of the crowd. A collective gasp, a whispered iteration of my name. I stumbled back, a deliberate, theatrical collapse. He roared with crude, triumphant laughter, and that was my cue. I offered them not the expected violence, but the undeniable weight of truth. Turning to his manager, who stood startled by the bar, I spoke with chilling calm. "You might want to check your email before your next meeting." The manager blinked, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. Moments later, his phone vibrated. Then again, the alert distinct, emanating this time from the HR representative standing just a few feet away. Even before the first damning video clip, his drunken boast about my wife began to play on the manager's screen. The whispers had already begun, a slow, venomous spread. Then I delivered the final crushing blow. A live stream, silently initiated from my phone, suddenly dominated the main hall screen. A meticulously crafted montage of incriminating screenshots, financial receipts, and his own voice, stitched together into an irrefutable public confession. The entire room fell into an absolute, suffocating stillness. He lunged, a primal, guttural roar escaping him. Security personnel surged forward, but he was a whirlwind of rage, shoving one guard aside, swinging wildly at another. When he charged at me again, face contorted, scarlet with humiliation, I merely stepped aside. He stumbled, catching his foot on the raised platform of the bar. The sound of his body hitting the floor wasn't a violent crash, but a sickening thud, quiet and utterly conclusive. He lay there unmoving. Security finally wrestled him away, his lip split and bleeding, and his career visibly collapsing with every drag across the floor. Lena ran after him, her voice raw, screaming his name, not mine. That singular fact stung, not from the pain of loss, but from the searing clarity of a truth I had meticulously avoided. She had already made her choice, long before this ignominious fall. The remainder of the evening dissolved into a haze of whispers and pitying glances. I allowed them their misjudgment, their perception of a broken, weak man. But when the authorities arrived, I calmly presented my meticulously compiled evidence. The emails, the documented harassment logs, the undeniable proof of his misconduct. In the days that followed, his professional world disintegrated. He was fired, facing litigation, and swiftly abandoned by his fiancée, the very woman to whom I had discreetly forwarded the damning evidence. Lena attempted to call, but I let the phone ring, the unanswered calls a silent statement. She appeared at my door, her eyes swollen, desperate for an explanation. I offered her a glass of water, and nothing more. Sometimes silence is the most resounding verdict. When she finally asked if I had meticulously orchestrated his downfall, I met her gaze with an unblinking certainty. "No," I told her, my voice level. "He did." "I just finished his story," I concluded. She offered no further words, simply stared, her eyes wide with the chilling recognition of a stranger. She wasn't wrong. Whispers from their office later suggested he spent a night in a hospital bed, recounting to nurses how the weak husband had meticulously orchestrated his demise. Perhaps I did. Perhaps I simply ceased pretending to be the man they thought I was. Since those defining moments, I've come to understand the true nature of protection. It isn't a crude display of fists, muscle, or empty bravado. It is an art of immense patience. It is the wisdom of knowing precisely when to endure, and more critically, when to orchestrate an end. So when people inquire why I didn't physically retaliate, why I refrain from throwing a punch, I simply offer a knowing smile. Because I did fight, just not in any way he or anyone ever saw coming. He wanted to prove he was a real man, a dominant force. Now he understands. Real men don't just roar. They move with a silent, devastating purpose.